Lyra was just a child when she met the human boy. Her planet, Valora, was one of the few peaceful places in the galaxy, open to human visitors. Daniel, a boy from Earth, came with his family who worked for the Human Exploration Council. His father was an engineer and his mother was a botanist. They were sent to Valora for research, but Daniel had nothing to do all day. That's when he found Lyra. She was different. Her skin had a soft bluish tone, and her small elf-like ears twitched when she smiled. She liked to play in the forests, chasing glowing insects and sliding down the smooth hills. One day Daniel followed a strange sound and found her talking to a bird-like creature. She was not scared of him even though she had never seen a human child before. "You're not from here," she said. "And you're not from Earth," Daniel replied, confused but curious. That was how it started. Every day. They met near the stream that ran between the human research camp and the alien village. They didn't care that their worlds were different. They didn't care that one had 5 fingers and the other had 4. All they cared about was fun. They played games, made up stories, and showed each other strange things. Lyra loved to braid leaves into crowns. Daniel loved to build toy rockets from sticks and stones. They taught each other words from their languages. They shared food. They laughed a lot. But what Lyra never told Daniel was how she felt inside. From the very beginning, she felt something special around him. She didn't have the words for it then. It was just warmth, happiness, and a strange flutter in her chest when he smiled. Lyra kept it to herself, thinking it was just part of being young and curious. One day, Daniel brought her a small gift. It was a necklace made of shiny metal, shaped like a star. "You said you liked stars," he said, placing it in her hand. Lyra looked at it for a long moment. "This means a lot," she whispered, her voice shaking. After that day, Lyra began to fear something. She heard from the elders that the humans would not stay long. Their mission was almost complete, and they would soon return to Earth. She didn't know how to tell Daniel that she didn't want him to leave. The day finally came. Daniel stood with his family near their ship. The sky was orange and the wind was quiet. Lyra walked slowly to him, holding the star necklace in her hand. Her eyes were full of sadness. "I'll come back one day," Daniel said, trying to smile. "I'll wait," Lyra whispered. They didn't hug. They didn't say goodbye like normal friends. They just stood and looked at each other, trying to remember every little detail. Then he was gone. Lyra stood there long after the ship disappeared into the sky. Her small hands clutched the necklace, now warm from her skin. She felt like something had been taken from her. But at the same time, she also felt a strange kind of promise growing inside her heart. Years passed. Lyra grew older. She trained in diplomacy and galactic studies. Her people believed in peace and knowledge. But no matter how far she rose in rank, her thoughts always drifted back to that boy, that human boy who gave her a star. As a young woman, she learned about something called a life claim, an ancient right among her people. If a person made a deep connection in youth, they could declare a bond and seek that person again, across space, across time. Lyra made her choice. She would return to him, not as a girl anymore, but as a woman, and this time she would not let him go. Years had passed since Lyra last saw Earth. She now wore a sleek blue and silver uniform that showed she was an official representative of her planet, Valora. But under all that formality, she was still the same girl who once waited by the stream, with a crown of leaves and a heart full of hope. Her starship entered Earth's orbit quietly. It was not a big ship, just enough for her and a small crew. She had told no one the real reason for this visit. The mission file said it was a cultural research tour. But Lyra had a different purpose, one she had held close to her heart for many years. She stood at the window watching the blue planet below. "Is everything ready for landing?" she asked calmly. "Yes, Representative," the pilot replied. Lyra gave a soft nod and whispered, "I'm coming, Daniel." Down on Earth, Daniel was living a quiet life in a small town near the hills. After traveling with his family during childhood, He had chosen a peaceful life. He worked in a local tech repair shop and spent his free time hiking and reading old books about the stars. Sometimes he would hold the little necklace he had once made for a special friend. He had kept it all these years, even though he didn't know why. One morning he heard a loud hum in the sky. People ran outside, pointing at a ship descending toward the old landing field outside town. It was sleek, shining, and clearly not human-made. Daniel felt something strange in his chest. He dropped the small tool he was holding and rushed outside. The ship had landed, and the ramp was lowering. A tall figure stepped out. She was graceful, her pale bluish skin glowing in the sunlight. Her hair was longer now, tied back neatly. Her posture was calm and proud, but her eyes, those bright, curious eyes, hadn't changed at all. Daniel's heart skipped a beat. "Lyra?" he asked, almost in a whisper. She smiled gently. "You remember." He walked forward, unsure what to say. "Of course I remember. You were my best friend, once, and you were mine," she replied softly. "I've waited a long time to see you again." The townspeople watched from a distance, confused but curious. Daniel ignored them. "I thought I'd never see you again," he said. "I made a promise," Lyra said. "I said I'd wait, and now I've come to take the next step." Daniel looked puzzled. "What do you mean?" "I made a life claim," she said. "In my culture, it means I choose someone as my future partner. I declared it long ago. Now I've come to see if you will accept." Daniel took a step back, stunned. You came all this way for me?" Lyra nodded. "You gave me something when we were children. A star. You said it meant something. To me, it meant everything." Daniel was quiet. His mind raced with questions, emotions, and memories. Lyra looked down for a moment. "I didn't come to force anything. If your heart says no, I will return. But I had to try." Daniel looked at the necklace he still wore around his neck. He smiled slowly. "You still braid leaves into crowns?" he asked. Lyra laughed, the sound soft and musical. "Only for special people." "Then maybe we should take a walk," Daniel said. They walked away from the crowd side by side, just like old times. The sun was warm, and the past didn't seem so far away anymore. Lyra didn't know what the future would hold. But for now, Daniel hadn't said no, and that was more than she had hoped for. Daniel and Lyra walked side by side through the same hills where he used to play as a boy. The morning wind was soft, and birds sang above the trees. It felt strange and familiar at the same time. Daniel looked at Lyra from the corner of his eye. She was beautiful now, graceful, calm, and confident, but her smile still reminded him of the little alien girl who used to laugh beside the stream. They stopped near an old wooden bench on the hilltop. It had a view of the valley below, where the small town stretched out peacefully. "You really made a life claim?" Daniel asked after a long silence. Lyra nodded. "I did. On the day you left, I promised myself that if I ever had the chance, I would return and tell you how I felt." Daniel looked down at his hands. "But we were kids back then." "True," Lyra said softly. "But what I felt never changed, even as I grew older. You were the first person who ever made me feel seen. You didn't care that I was different." Daniel smiled a little. "You didn't care that I was human either." Lyra turned to him, her voice gentle. "I came to find out if there's still a place for me in your world. Or maybe if you'd come to mine." Daniel leaned back, unsure of what to say. It wasn't that he didn't care about her, he did, but this was all so sudden. One moment he was fixing a broken toaster, and the next a woman from another planet was asking him to share her life. "I never thought anyone would come back for me," he said finally. "You came back for me too," Lyra said. "You never forgot me, I can feel it." He looked at her again, really looked. Her eyes were full of hope. And behind that hope, there was something deeper. Honesty, maybe even love. Still, it wasn't an easy choice. Daniel had a quiet life. He didn't know if he was ready to change everything. What would it mean? He asked slowly. If I said yes? Lyra took a deep breath. It would mean we explore this bond together. We learn from each other. We try. There's no force, no chains, only choice. Daniel nodded thoughtfully. And if I say no? Then I'll leave, she said, her voice steady but sad. And I'll carry your memory with respect, always. The honesty in her words made Daniel feel a deep warmth in his chest. She wasn't here to take. She was here to offer. They sat in silence for a while. Below, the town was starting to move. People were beginning their day. Somewhere, a child laughed. Somewhere else, a dog barked. Do you still like building little star rockets? Lyra asked, changing the mood. Daniel chuckled. I still have one in my drawer. A bit broken, but still mine. Then maybe we can build one together, she said, smiling again. He turned to her and met her gaze. Let's start with lunch. Something simple, like we did before. Lyra laughed. Only if you still know how to roast those little red fruits you used to love. Deal, Daniel said. As they stood up, Daniel didn't realize that the first step had already been taken. It wasn't a yes or a no, it was a beginning. And sometimes that's all that's needed. But far above them, in the sky where Lyra's ship had come from, a small dark vessel hovered quietly. Someone else had followed her. Someone who did not want this bond to happen. Daniel and Lyra returned to his house, a small quiet place near the edge of town. The walls were filled with books, tools, and a few old pictures. One of them was a drawing he made when he was 10, 2 stick figures standing near a stream. One had big ears and blue skin. Lyra smiled when she saw it. You kept this? She asked, touching the paper gently. Daniel looked a bit shy. It reminded me of the only real friend I had back then. Lyra didn't say anything, but her eyes sparkled. The bond they once had was still alive, and now they were slowly finding it again. They spent the afternoon cooking together. Lyra helped Daniel prepare a simple meal. She was curious about every ingredient. She sniffed spices, tasted sauces, and even sneezed loudly when she touched pepper. Daniel laughed harder than he had in years. After lunch, they walked again, this time through the quiet streets of the town. People stared at Lyra, whispering to each other. Most had never seen an alien before, at least not up close. Some were polite, others confused. A few were clearly not happy. An older man outside a store frowned and muttered, "What's she doing here?" Daniel noticed, but Lyra kept calm. She had trained for this. Not every species would accept outsiders easily. Still, it hurt a little. Daniel spoke gently. "Don't worry. Some people just need time." "I'm used to it," Lyra replied. "But thank you." Suddenly she paused. Her body tensed. Her eyes scanned the sky. Daniel followed her gaze but saw nothing. "What is it?" he asked. "I felt something," she whispered. "A signal. A presence." Daniel looked worried. "From who?" "I don't know yet, but it's not friendly." Unknown to them, a shadow watched from afar. Inside a cloaked ship above Earth, a male Valoran named Kyle sat with his arms crossed. He had once trained with Lyra in the same academy. He had admired her, maybe even loved her. But she never looked at him the same way. And when she filed the life claim with a human, it broke something inside him. "She will not choose a human over her people," Kyle muttered. "I'll make sure of it." That evening, Daniel and Lyra sat on the porch, watching the stars. She told him about her world, about the floating gardens, the glowing trees, the silent lakes. He listened, amazed. In return, he told her about Earth, its messy cities, warm food, and silly movies. Then he asked, "Is it true? The life claim?" "Yes," she said. "It's rare now, but still allowed. We believe in choosing once from the heart. Not with force but truth." Daniel nodded. "And what if the other person isn't sure?" "Then we give them time," she said softly. "Even if it takes years." Daniel smiled. "You're very patient." "I had to be," she replied. For you. Their eyes met, and for a moment silence spoke louder than words. Suddenly a loud sound echoed in the distance. It came from the sky. Daniel stood up quickly. What was that? Lyra's face changed. She looked toward the hills. We're not alone, she said. Someone followed me. The sound grew louder. Daniel and Lyra looked up to see a dark shape moving through the clouds. It was a small but advanced spacecraft unlike anything Earth used. Its design was sharp, and it moved like a hunter. Lyra's eyes narrowed. That ship is not from Earth, she said. It's Valoran, but it's not from my crew. Daniel's heartbeat quickened. You think someone came after you? Yes, she said, standing tall. I believe it's Kale. Who's Kale? A warrior from my home. He once trained with me. He didn't like that I made a life claim for a human. Daniel stepped back, trying to process what she said. Wait, you mean he's here because of me? Lyra nodded. He doesn't believe a bond between human and Valoran is right. He thinks I made a mistake. The ship circled once, then disappeared behind the hills. He's looking for a place to land, Lyra said. We don't have much time. Daniel grabbed his coat. Then let's go, we can't just sit here. Where will we go? There's an old emergency shelter in the forest, Daniel said. My dad used it when he worked here years ago. No one knows it's still active. Lyra gave a firm nod. Lead the way. They ran through the back roads and slipped into the woods. The forest was quiet, but every sound made Daniel's heart race. Lyra kept looking over her shoulder, alert and ready. After some time, they reached the shelter. It was hidden behind thick trees, covered in vines and moss. Daniel opened the old steel door. Inside it was dusty but safe. We can stay here for now, he said, breathing heavily. Lyra looked around. This will work, but we need to prepare. If Kale finds us, he won't talk. He'll act. Daniel sat down, trying to calm himself. Why would he care so much just because you chose me? It's more than that, Lyra said, sitting beside him. He believes humans are weak. He thinks our people should never bond with other species. He sees this life claim as a threat to our traditions. Daniel looked at her. But isn't your tradition about love and choice? Lyra smiled sadly. It is. But some people still fear change. Suddenly a loud noise echoed through the forest, something crashing nearby. He's here, Lyra said, standing up fast. Daniel followed her to the door. In the distance, they saw smoke and broken trees. Kyle's ship had landed. We need to stop him before he reaches the town, Lyra said. Won't he come here first? No, she replied. He doesn't know you'd bring me into the forest. He'll head for the main road first. Daniel nodded. Then we go to him. Daniel, it's dangerous. I won't hide, he said. If he wants to challenge the bond between us, then I'll face him. Not as a fighter, but as a man who cares about you. Lyra paused, her expression softening. You've changed. So have you, Daniel said with a smile. They moved quickly, using the trees for cover. The smoke guided them to the crash site. Kale was already outside his ship, tall and strong, his silver armor shining. He looked around with cold eyes. When he saw them, his face turned hard. You brought him here? Kale asked, stepping forward. Lyra stood in front of Daniel. He's not afraid of you. He should be, Kale said. You don't belong with him, Lyra. I choose who I belong with, she replied firmly. Our people believe in the bond. You're the one who forgot that. Kale's hands tightened into fists. Then prove it. Let him stand for you. Daniel stepped forward, his voice steady. I'm not a soldier, but I'm not leaving her alone. If you want to stop her from choosing me, you'll have to go through both of us. Kyle looked between them, eyes dark with emotion. This isn't over, he said. But you've made your side clear. He turned and walked back to his ship, which lifted into the air moments later. As the smoke cleared, Lyra turned to Daniel. You didn't have to do that. I wanted to, Daniel said. You're worth standing up for. Lyra smiled, her eyes shining with feeling. Maybe this bond is stronger than even I believed. The air was calm again. Kale's ship had disappeared into the sky, leaving behind only broken branches and black smoke. Daniel and Lyra stood together near the landing site, silent for a moment. The trees around them slowly returned to their quiet rhythm. Birds singing, leaves rustling, life continuing. Lyra turned to Daniel. "You could have been hurt." Daniel shook his head. "So could you. But we stood together. That matters." She looked at him closely, her expression soft. "You were brave, not because you fought, but because you didn't run." Daniel smiled slightly. "You were worth it." They began walking back through the forest. The sky had turned golden with the setting sun, and the warm light touched Lyra's skin in a way that made her seem almost glowing, though not in a magical way, just peaceful. As they reached the edge of town, Lyra slowed down. "Daniel," she said, her voice thoughtful. "After today, Kale may return, or others might come. Choosing me could mean danger." Daniel stopped and looked at her. "I know, but you also bring something good into my life. You remind me of who I was, and who I could still be." She smiled gently. "I came here hoping to reconnect with a childhood bond, but what I've found is something more." They sat on a bench near a small lake just outside the town. The stars were beginning to appear, one by one. Daniel looked up. "I used to think about you when I stared at the sky," he said. "I wondered if you still remembered me." "I never forgot," Lyra replied. "I carried the memory of you like a light inside me. When everything else was dark or difficult, it reminded me of something pure." Daniel looked at her. "But what happens now?" "That depends on you," she said. "I made my choice long ago. I came here because I still care. But I won't force you." Daniel stayed quiet for a long time. He thought about his life, simple, safe, and quiet. He also thought about how dull it had become before she arrived. Lyra brought something new, something he couldn't explain. "I don't know what the future holds," Daniel finally said, "but I don't want to lose you again, not this time." Lyra's eyes brightened. "Then we face the future together." He took her hand. It was warm, and her fingers gently curled around his. It wasn't just a childhood friendship anymore. It was something growing slowly but surely. Suddenly a light appeared in the sky again. But this time it wasn't a threat. Lyra recognized the ship. It was one of her own crew coming to check on her. "They've come for a report," she said. "I'll have to speak to them." Daniel nodded. "Will they allow you to stay longer?" "They will ask what I've found here," she said, "and I will tell them the truth." She stood and looked at him one more time. "This isn't just about us anymore. If they see that a bond between our kinds can work, it could change the way our people see each other." Daniel stood beside her. "Then let's give them something real to believe in." As the ship landed nearby and her crew stepped out, Lyra held her head high. But she didn't go alone. She walked with Daniel beside her, hand in hand. This wasn't the end. It was the beginning. Lyra stood tall beside Daniel as her crew stepped out from the ship. The Valoran ship was silent and smooth, its lights glowing softly in the evening air. 3 crew members walked down the ramp, their long coats moving with the wind. They looked, surprised to see a human standing next to their representative. The lead officer, a calm and older Valoran woman named Saren, stepped forward. "Representative Lyra, we received your signal. Are you safe?" "Yes," Lyra replied, her voice steady. "There was trouble. A rogue ship followed me, but the danger has passed." Saren looked at Daniel. "And this is, the human from the claim?" Daniel gave a small smile and nodded politely. "Daniel." Saren examined him carefully, then turned back to Lyra. "Many on Valora still question the life claim you made. They believe it was childish, emotional." "It wasn't childish," Lyra said firmly. "It was real. And now, even stronger than before. Saren's face stayed calm. Then your duty is clear. You must present him to the High Council. Let them see the truth of your bond. Daniel blinked. What does that mean? It means, Lyra said gently, that we'll go to Vylora together, if you're willing. Daniel looked at her, surprised. He had never left Earth before, not even the planet, let alone across the galaxy. Will they accept me? Some will, some won't, she said honestly. But I'll stand beside you. Always. He took a deep breath and nodded. Then, let's go. The next day, Daniel packed a small bag. He looked around his house at the tools, the books, and the quiet walls. It wasn't much, but it had been home. Still, something inside him told him it was time for change. Outside, Lyra waited with Saren. The ship's door stood open, ready. As Daniel stepped out, a few townspeople gathered. Some waved, some just watched in silence. An older woman stepped forward and gave him a small cloth bag. For the journey, she said with a kind smile. You're braver than most of us. Daniel thanked her and stepped onto the ship. The door closed behind him and the engines began to hum. Through the window, Earth grew smaller as they rose into the sky. The trip to Vylora took only a few days through advanced warp travel. Daniel spent the time learning about Lyra's culture, how her people lived in harmony with nature, how they sang to the stars, and how every life was treated with respect. He also noticed how Lyra became more relaxed. Being back among her people gave her comfort, but having him beside her gave her joy. They laughed more. They talked deeply. Every moment brought them closer. When they reached Vylora, Daniel was stunned. The planet was filled with floating islands, glowing rivers, and skies painted in soft colors. It was like a dream. They landed near the Capitol Tower. The High Council was waiting. Inside the Grand Hall, Lyra stood before the council. Daniel stood beside her. Elders watched from high seats, their expressions unreadable. Lyra spoke first. I made a life claim as a child, but I return now as a woman still sure of that bond. This human has stood beside me in danger and peace. I choose him, not from memory, but from truth. An elder asked Daniel, and do you accept this bond, human? Daniel looked at Lyra. Yes. I didn't understand it at first, but now, I do. She believed in me before I even believed in myself. I won't walk away from that. Silence filled the hall. Then the eldest member nodded slowly. The bond is accepted. Lyra smiled with deep emotion. Daniel reached for her hand. Later that evening, under the soft light of Vylora's twin moons, Lyra and Daniel stood on a balcony. You once gave me a star, she said, holding the old necklace. And you gave me a reason to dream, he replied. They didn't need to say anything more. The journey that started as children had become something real, something strong. Together they looked out into the stars, not as two from different worlds, but as one.